There comes a time in life when you feel a quiet shift within you, something subtle yet undeniable. The things that once excited you no longer hold the same power. The people who used to understand you now seem to speak a different language. The goals you once chased begin to feel too small for the person you are becoming. You may not be able to explain it, but you can sense it. You've outgrown the old version of yourself. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds through signs that whisper before they roar. The truth is, growth doesn't always look like success. Often it looks like confusion, distance, loss, and silence. But these are not signs of failure. They are signals that evolution is taking place. The first signal is discomfort with what used to feel normal. The conversations you once enjoyed start to drain you. The habits you once found comforting begin to feel heavy. The patterns that used to define you now feel like a cage. This discomfort isn't punishment, it's guidance. Life has a quiet way of showing you that you no longer belong where you used to be. Think of it like wearing clothes that no longer fit. They served you once, but they restrict your movement now. When your environment feels too small, it's because your awareness has expanded. You are being pushed towards something larger. The discomfort is not a reason to retreat. It's a signal to realign. Growth often begins with unease because your spirit recognizes when something familiar has become limiting. The second signal is the loss of interest in things that no longer nurture your development. What used to thrill you now feels meaningless. It's not that you've become lazy or unmotivated. It's that your energy is searching for something deeper. The activities, distractions, or even achievements that once gave you satisfaction may now leave you empty. This emptiness isn't a void. It's space being created for something new. The human mind and spirit evolve through curiosity. And when you stop feeling drawn to the same experiences, it's because your inner compass has already pointed you elsewhere. Instead of forcing yourself to find joy in what no longer feeds you, allow yourself to follow the quiet pull toward new challenges. Curiosity is the language of growth. When your interests shift, your direction changes too, and that's a sign you're stepping closer to your next version. The third signal is solitude becoming your teacher rather than your enemy. In the earlier stages of life, being alone may have felt uncomfortable, even frightening. But when you outgrow the old you, silence starts to feel like peace. Solitude becomes a mirror that shows you who you truly are without the noise of validation or judgment. You begin to understand that growth does not require an audience. The world often tells you to stay busy, to be surrounded, to always be visible. But true evolution happens in the quiet moments of reflection. When you start choosing solitude not as an escape, but as a sanctuary, it means your awareness has deepened. You no longer need constant distraction to feel alive. You have learned that clarity comes from stillness, and that the most important conversations you will ever have are the ones you have with yourself. The fourth signal is detachment from the need to prove yourself. The old version of you was likely built around external validation, the need to be liked, accepted, understood, or admired. You tried to fit into spaces, please others, and meet expectations that didn't truly belong to you. But as you grow, you begin to see that no amount of approval can substitute for inner alignment. You stop needing to explain your choices or defend your boundaries. You no longer chase recognition. You chase authenticity. Detachment doesn't mean arrogance. It means peace. You stop fighting to be understood by those who are not meant to understand you. When you realize that your worth isn't tied to how much you are seen, but how deeply you are connected to your truth, you step into a rare kind of freedom. That freedom is a sign that the old you, built from fear and approval, has finally dissolved. The fifth signal is that you start valuing depth over intensity. In your younger stages of self, you may have sought excitement, drama, or extremes, anything that made you feel alive. But with growth, your definition of alive changes. You begin to crave calmness more than chaos, meaningful connections more than many connections, and sustainable progress more than quick wins. You no longer need adrenaline to feel purpose. You seek consistency, peace, and depth instead. You learn that growth is not about chasing highs, it's about mastering stability. When small things begin to satisfy you more than big moments used to, it means you've entered a higher form of awareness. Your emotions become quieter but deeper. You begin to see that the true strength lies not in how loudly you can fight life, but in how calmly you can face it. The sixth signal is your ability to let go without resentment. Letting go used to mean loss. Now it means clarity. You stop holding on to people, memories, or identities that drain your energy. You start understanding that not everything that stays in your life is meant to continue, and not everything that leaves is meant to be replaced. Letting go becomes less about pain and more about trust. The trust that what belongs to your future cannot be taken away by the past. This is one of the strongest signs that you've outgrown the old you. When you can release without anger, walk away without revenge, and say goodbye without bitterness. You've learned that peace costs more than attachment, and you are no longer willing to trade your energy for comfort that keeps you small. Growth means losing what was safe in order to gain what is true. When you begin recognizing these signals, something extraordinary happens. You stop fearing change. You stop resisting the unknown. You begin to see that outgrowing yourself is not an act of betrayal. It's an act of evolution. Every time you evolve, you must shed layers of identity, habits, and beliefs that once felt like home. It's not easy to say goodbye to a version of yourself that carried you through hard times. But if you want to reach new levels of awareness, you must travel lighter. You can't take every version of yourself into the next chapter. The old you had its purpose. It built your strength, shaped your resilience, and taught you lessons that prepared you for this very moment. But that version has completed its task. Honor it, but don't live inside it. The same way a tree must shed leaves to make room for new growth. You must release what no longer serves your expansion. The process of outgrowing yourself isn't glamorous. It's often lonely, uncertain, and full of internal conflict. You will question who you are, what you want, and where you belong. But understand this: confusion is a natural part of clarity. Before a new identity takes form, the old one must dissolve. It's okay to feel lost when you are redefining direction. Every meaningful transformation passes through this stage of uncertainty. When you stop trying to rush it and instead observe it, you begin to see that this phase is not chaos, it's reorganization. Your mind, your values, and your energy are aligning into something more refined, more intentional, more conscious. Growth doesn't always announce itself with triumph. Sometimes it whispers through discomfort, silence, and change. You are not meant to stay the same. Nature never does. The river doesn't apologize for changing its course, and the seasons don't hesitate to shift. Likewise, your evolution is a natural expression of being alive. The old you was necessary for the lessons you now understand, but the new you requires courage. The courage to trust yourself even when others don't understand your transformation. Remember that the people who met the old you may not always recognize the new one, and that's okay. You're not here to stay recognizable. You're here to become real. When your inner world changes, your outer world must adjust too. Relationships, environments, and routines will either rise to meet your new energy or naturally fade away. Don't fight this process. It's not rejection, it's alignment. Growth is a cycle that repeats throughout life. Every time you reach a new level of awareness, you'll feel these signals again: discomfort, loss, detachment, solitude, and renewal. But with each cycle, you'll handle it with more wisdom and less resistance. You'll stop seeing endings as failures and start recognizing them as invitations. You'll stop fearing what's falling apart and start focusing on what's being rebuilt. The old you needed certainty. The new you thrives in trust. The old you chased validation. The new you builds integrity. The old you reacted to pain. The new you learns from it. And that is the essence of personal mastery. Not perfection, but awareness. You're not here to be the best version of your past self. You're here to become the most conscious version of your present one. So if you find yourself outgrowing conversations, places, habits, or even your own ambitions, don't shrink back into familiarity. Don't interpret your evolution as arrogance or confusion. You are not lost. You are simply becoming. Every signal that something no longer fits is a quiet reminder that your potential is expanding beyond what you once imagined. The old you helped you survive, the new you will help you live. Honor the bridge between them, but keep walking, because growth doesn't wait for comfort. It begins the moment you decide that staying the same is no longer enough. When you begin to move beyond the older version of yourself, pain doesn't appear as an enemy. It arrives as a signal, the very first whisper that something inside you is beginning to grow. It's not a punishment, though it often feels like one. It's a recalibration. Growth stretches the inner boundaries you've lived within for so long, and that stretching brings tension. Think of a seed buried beneath the soil. For it to become a tree, it must first split apart, break through its shell, and push against the darkness that once protected it. The pressure, the cracking, the struggle, it's all part of becoming. In the same way, when your inner awareness begins to expand, you will feel the strain between who you were and who you're becoming. When your perspective evolves, but the environment around you stays still, the imbalance becomes hard to ignore. You start noticing things you never questioned before. Conversations that once satisfied you now seem shallow. Activities that used to excite you no longer feel meaningful. This friction between the old and the new self creates emotional turbulence. You might question if something's wrong with you when in reality something is *. The unease is the body's quiet language letting you know that your energy is changing form. You're not designed to fit into the same emotional or mental spaces forever. The shell that once protected you now restricts you. People around you might not understand this change. They'll see you becoming quieter, more distant, more reflective, and they may misinterpret that as arrogance or loss of direction. But what they're witnessing is the natural shedding of layers that no longer match your vibration. You are moving through a transition that can't always be seen, only felt. It's like standing between two worlds, the one that raised you and the one that's calling you forward. The pain comes from trying to keep one foot in each. When you feel restless or out of place, don't mistake it for failure or confusion. Restlessness is the soul's way of nudging you toward growth. It's a message. You've learned everything you needed to learn here, and it's time to move forward. Yet the mind resists. It clings to comfort, to familiarity, to identity. It tells you that change is dangerous, that safety lies in what you already know. But nothing alive stays still. The tree keeps reaching higher, the ocean keeps shifting, and the body keeps renewing its cells. Why would your spirit be any different? The discomfort you feel is simply your inner nature trying to keep pace with your own evolution. You might notice that the things you once tolerated now disturb your peace. The people you once leaned on may no longer resonate with your values. The environments that once felt warm begin to feel heavy. This isn't because the world changed suddenly. It's because your perception did. You've started to see more, feel more, understand more. Your consciousness expanded beyond the limits of your past self. That expansion naturally brings disconnection from what can no longer sustain it. The pain comes from holding on too tightly to what's meant to be released. It takes courage to stop resisting this process. The natural instinct is to retreat, to try to squeeze yourself back into familiar forms, to deny that growth has begun. But no matter how tightly you hold on, life will keep reminding you that you are meant for more. Opportunities will fall away, relationships will shift, routines will lose their meaning, all to make room for something greater. Pain is not the enemy of progress, it's the compass pointing toward transformation. When you stop labeling it as suffering and start viewing it as information, everything changes. Every challenge, every uncomfortable emotion, every period of uncertainty is preparing you for alignment. Growth often feels like destruction at first because the old foundation must crumble before the new one can stand. You might feel like you're losing control, but in truth, you're gaining freedom. The freedom to choose who you become consciously this time. The pressure you feel is simply potential energy building up, waiting to be directed toward a higher version of your life. Sometimes the pain of expansion isolates you. You may feel disconnected from others, misunderstood, or unseen. That isolation, however, is part of your refinement. It forces you to rely on inner strength instead of external validation. It teaches you to trust your intuition when there are no signs confirming you're on the right path. Growth requires silence because clarity speaks softly. It's in the moments of stillness, when you stop running from your discomfort, that understanding begins to surface. The pain of expansion also dismantles the illusions you once depended on. It strips away false identities, shallow goals, and misplaced attachments. You realize that many of the things you used to chase were distractions, ways to fill a space that could only be filled by awareness. When those illusions fade, emptiness follows, but that emptiness isn't a void, it's space, and in that space, new meaning takes root. You start to value authenticity over approval, peace over excitement, depth over drama. There will be days when you'll want to turn back, to shrink into who you were just to feel safe again. But the truth is, you can't return to smallness once you've tasted expansion. The old world no longer holds the same colors because your perception has changed. You might revisit familiar places, but they'll never feel the same because it's you who is different. Once the mind grows in understanding, it cannot unsee what it has seen. Once the heart expands in awareness, it cannot be content with what is shallow. So, when pain comes, don't immediately try to escape it. Sit with it, observe it, ask what it's trying to teach you. Behind every discomfort is a lesson about strength, patience, and surrender. Behind every loss is a quiet preparation for renewal. The pain of expansion is simply the shedding of what no longer fits your evolution. It's the echo of your own transformation reverberating through the structure of your old life. You'll know you're moving through this stage not when everything feels clear, but when confusion no longer scares you. You'll start to recognize that uncertainty is not chaos, it's creation. You'll begin to sense that the tension you feel is not a sign to stop, but a signal to continue. Because just like the seed that pushes through the soil, you are not breaking apart, you are breaking open. Growth doesn't always announce itself through light. Sometimes it reveals itself through pressure. The pain is temporary, but what it gives birth to is lasting. One day, you'll look back at this stage and realize that the pain wasn't trying to hurt you, it was trying to free you. Every restless night, every emotional storm, every moment of feeling misunderstood was the universe's way of preparing you to meet yourself at a higher level. So instead of asking, "Why does this hurt so much?" ask, "What part of me is trying to grow through this?" The answer will remind you that expansion is not something that happens to you. It's something that happens for you. And when you learn to embrace the pain not as a barrier but as a bridge, you will no longer fear the transformation that's been waiting for you all along. The most challenging part of transformation isn't saying goodbye to people or places. It's saying goodbye to the version of yourself that once carried you through life. That old self, the one who worked tirelessly to fit in, who shaped their behavior to be accepted, who wore masks to feel worthy, doesn't simply disappear when you decide to change. They are woven into your habits, your thoughts, your fears, and your memories. Walking away from that version feels like tearing pages from your own story. You remember their struggles, their dreams, their pain, and you hesitate because it feels like leaving behind a loyal companion. But growth demands a kind of courage that looks quiet from the outside. It's the courage to let go of who you were so you can meet who you're becoming. There's an invisible grief that comes with inner evolution. You may find yourself missing the simplicity of your old mindset, even if it was built on limitation. You might long for the comfort of patterns that once made you feel safe, even when those patterns were built on fear. The old you represents familiarity, and the mind always clings to what it knows, even if it no longer serves you. That's why change often feels like loss before it feels like liberation. You must learn to mourn the identity you're outgrowing, just as you would mourn a chapter that has reached its end, because in a way it is a death, the death of the version of you that was defined by survival instead of awareness. As you evolve, your relationship with yourself becomes layered. One part of you is ready to leap into the unknown, while another part still holds the hand of who you used to be. This internal conflict can feel like walking in two directions at once. You may feel guilt for wanting more, as though you're betraying your past, but growth doesn't erase the old self, it honors it by building upon its foundation. Every version of you has had a purpose. The one who fought for belonging taught you resilience. The one who craved validation showed you the value of self-acceptance. The one who played small protected you when you weren't ready to expand. Now, that protection has become confinement, and the only way forward is to thank those parts of yourself for their service and release them with gratitude. True transformation isn't about collecting new traits or achievements. It's about shedding illusions. It's about peeling away everything that isn't real so that what remains is pure awareness. That process can be uncomfortable because it requires honesty. You start seeing the ways you've lied to yourself, how often you've settled, compromised, or pretended. The layers of performance that once helped you navigate the world begin to crumble. You no longer have the energy to fake confidence, to force connections, or to justify your worth. And as each layer falls away, you start meeting yourself without armor. It's raw, it's quiet, it's real. Growth, in its truest form, is the art of becoming unrecognizable to the old patterns that once ruled you. Letting go of your old self doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It unfolds through countless small choices. It's when you stop reacting the way you used to. It's when you choose silence instead of defense, peace instead of control, awareness instead of judgment. Each choice becomes a declaration. I'm no longer that person. Yet, even as you grow, echoes of the old you may still call you back. You'll hear their voice in moments of doubt, telling you to return to safety, to comfort, to certainty. That's when courage must take the lead. Courage doesn't mean you're fearless. It means you trust your direction more than your comfort. You learn to move forward even when the mind begs you to look back. There's beauty in realizing that leaving yourself behind isn't an act of rejection. It's an act of deep self-respect. You are not abandoning the person you once were. You are acknowledging that they've fulfilled their purpose. They were necessary for your journey, but they cannot accompany you to where you are going next. You can carry their lessons without carrying their limits. You can hold their memories without holding their fears. This understanding turns the pain of change into gratitude. Instead of resenting the discomfort of transformation, you start to see it as evidence of your commitment to growth. The world around you may not notice this process, but you will. You'll feel lighter, more deliberate. The noise in your mind will quiet, not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped arguing with yourself. You'll begin to understand that real evolution doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks, it arrives in stillness. It's when you realize you no longer need to chase approval, explain your worth, or repeat old stories to feel alive. You become comfortable being misunderstood because you finally understand yourself. That's when you know the shift is real. The old identity no longer has power over you, but the journey isn't without resistance. There will be moments when the past pulls you back, when nostalgia disguises itself as belonging. You'll remember the version of yourself that once found joy in small distractions or validation from others, and part of you will want to revisit that comfort. Yet if you return, you'll notice it no longer fits. The conversations, the ambitions, even the emotions will feel different, as if you're walking through a memory instead of a life. That realization can be painful, but it's also freeing. It means you've outgrown the frequency of your former self. You can visit your past, but you can't live there anymore. Growth doesn't always feel like progress. It often feels like dismantling. You'll face uncertainty, isolation, and self-doubt. But every time you release an old belief, an outdated story, or a limiting habit, you create space for awareness to expand. That space is where renewal begins. It's where clarity enters quietly and teaches you that peace was never about perfection. It was about alignment. The more you strip away the unnecessary, the more room you create for stillness, for presence, for authenticity. To leave yourself behind is to trust the process even when it's uncomfortable. It's to understand that transformation doesn't ask for permission. It asks for surrender. You can't step into the new while clinging to the old. The caterpillar doesn't drag its shell into the cocoon. It dissolves completely before becoming something new. In that same way, you must allow your old self to dissolve, not with bitterness, but with faith. Faith that what remains will be truer, wiser, and more complete. In the end, the greatest act of self, love, is evolution. It's refusing to stay smaller than your potential. It's honoring the past without living inside it. It's having the bravery to say, "Thank you for getting me this far, but I must continue alone." When you do that, you transform the fear of loss into the freedom of becoming. You stop chasing what you were and start embodying what you are meant to be. Leaving yourself behind isn't a tragedy. It's the purest form of renewal. It's how you meet the version of you that your old self was always preparing you to become.